Hello and welcome to the Gratitude and Growth Podcast. I'm your host, Sarah Mittich. I am an actor, a yoga instructor, a former ballet dancer, but above all, I am a wildly curious person. So I've spent the past several years researching and studying human behavior, why we do what we do, who and what we innately are, what my purpose is on this planet. And I'm here to share the insights and the tools that curiosity has led me to uncover, in hopes of helping you to navigate the inevitable ups and downs of your own life, and in hopes of inspiring you to become the person that you have always wanted to be. So pull up a chair or go for a walk, hop on that treadmill or go for a drive, and join me as I explore what it is to be a human being in this lifetime. Hello, and welcome back to another episode. I have a guest with me today that I'm so excited to sit down and talk with because we've never actually had the opportunity to sit and talk about some of these amazing topics. We actually met back in 2019 at Windsor Comic Con when he interviewed me, as well as a few other cast members, on the Star Trek Discovery panel. Our paths crossed again when I launched the podcast, and here he is. He is a motivational speaker for over 30 years now, an author of Hooray for Everything, the Optimist Manifesto, and my favorite title and hat that he wears, a Silver Lining Prospector. Please let me introduce Ian Tyson.
Well, hello, Sarah. Thank you for the lovely intro. I appreciate it.
Of course. Hi, Ian. Thank you so
Hi.
much for doing this with me.
Honestly, it's such a pleasure. I've so been enjoying the show, and as I've been listening, I do like in my head, I'm like, oh, geez, Sarah and I have so much to talk about because
Yes.
there's so many things that are just very aligned in terms of outlook and mindset. But I love the frank and open way you've been sharing your journey, and it's really inspiring and right in my wheelhouse in terms of the things I love to talk about. So it's honestly an honor and a pleasure.
Thank you so much. That means so much to me, truly. The podcast it's been something I've been wanting to do for a while. I didn't know that it was going to be a podcast when it all first started, I thought maybe there would be other avenues of sharing, but it's been such an incredible tool of growth for me, and being so open for the first time ever really in my life, of being so open publicly has been a journey. It's been a journey. So thank you. Every single time somebody tells me that they resonate with it, that they see themselves with it, or just certain tools and concepts that they're using them and they're implementing them, and more than that, that they're seeing a change, is that means the most to me. That's all I want to do, is just
Oh,
give people these tools.
couldn't agree more. I mean, that's why I do what I do for a living. It's that same thing. And when you hear back that, as you just said perfectly, that something resonates, that's the whole job. That's why.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. And I have something I want to start with off the top with you. So gratitude is my favorite thing in the world.
Mm.
Gratitude is my way of life. It has become who I am in a way. And you've taken gratitude and you've turned it into this word that I love called great fuel.
Yes.
Can you tell me, can you tell me your journey to gratitude and where that came from and where great fuel came from?
Well, great fuel, that was something that had been tossing around in my head for a while as I was working out material for the stage. I mean, look, this is what I do for a living. I get up in front of people and I talk and I share my stories and I try to be open and honest and authentic and wear my heart on my sleeve and talk a lot about my personal journey. And there was this piece around gratitude. And, I was an English major. So I love, playing with words and getting into it. And so, yeah, great fuel. And just to clarify, because we're in an audio format, that's GRATE, capital FUEL, as opposed to some people think I'm saying great like GREAT, but no, it's taking grateful and making it into great fuel. So really the impetus of that for me, at least, I mean, it is the way it comes in my life, but it's also the way I tell a story on stage, is part of my journey and part of my story that I have shared for years from the stage, sort of my inciting incident, if you will, is lost my mother when I was 10, which obviously when you're at that stage in growth, that was a large trauma for my dad, for my older brother, for my younger sister. And it's something that ends up defining you. It's something that I have unpacked a lot as an adult in therapy and what that did to things like my attachment style and how I related to people and all of these things that I probably unpacked a little too late in my life, but I'm filled with the great fuel that I did eventually unpack them and the clarity that's given me. But where the story comes from is that one of the we were it was, 70s, 80s, my siblings and I were latchkey kids, as many people were back in the day, a single father. Mom was in hospitals and long care treatment facilities for years before this, so we didn't really have memories of mom in our house. And so being latchkey kids, we would come home and whoever got there first with their key would open the door and there'd be, this little note from dad, a list of the chores we had to do to make sure food was going to be on the table. So we cooked. My older brother, more often than not, was making some kind of meat, sort of the main protein. My younger sister would do the vegetables because she was 2 years younger than me. She was just little. She could throw them in the microwave. That was easy for her. I ended up, making the carbs usually. And more often than not, I would make, instant mashed potatoes. And there's a whole other story about my love and life's work that is mashed potatoes. But when it when it comes down to it, we would fight like siblings do. But when dad came home and we would then put that meal on the table, because he wasn't the one doing it, because he ran his own business and long days and stuff, we may not have been a family growing up that necessarily said grace every day before dinner, but we absolutely gave thanks. I mean, we would be giving thanks for the food on the plate, obviously. We would be giving thanks for each other in spite of the arguing that siblings do. We would be giving thanks to the father who was really getting us through this tough time. And we gave that thanks and we felt that gratitude really in spite of the empty chair that was at the end of our dining room table. And when we felt that gratitude on our darkest days, something pretty incredible happened that I wasn't even aware of until you reflect back at it as an adult. But when we received or we felt gratitude, all we wanted to do was give it back. And then we would receive it again. And it became this cycle. And so the way I saw it, I'm very visual in the way I think about things and tell my stories. It became this engine for our healing. The gratitude did. And that the food may have, fed our bodies and fueled our bodies, but the gratitude fed and fueled our lives. And it became the engine for our healing. So that, for me, is where Great Fuel comes from. I was just thinking about this morning, knowing that we were chatting. In my mind, it is literally the alpha and the omega. Gratitude is how you start. Gratitude is the end goal. And gratitude is the fuel that gets you there. It is all of it, especially like being able to find something to be grateful for on your darkest day is a superpower. You are unstoppable as a human being. If even on your worst day, you can say, there's one thing I'm grateful for.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much for sharing all of that. Our stories, our lives do kind of resonate with each other a little bit,
Yeah.
but I think you named it, and I say this all the time, is I always say my superpower is I can find gratitude, and more than that, with my friends, with my immediate circle. My superpower is that I can guide people to find gratitude even in the hardest times, even in the hardest situations. And people always ask me, but how do you actually do that? Like in the moment, how do you do that? And this past year, my own journey with gratitude, I got introduced to the concept of gratitude when I read Rhonda Byrne's The Magic. It's a 28-day gratitude practice. And I think I did that in like 2014. And I was like, whoa, I feel so good. And like suddenly all these like miracles are happening in my life and everything's lining up. And I realized I was like, oh, okay, gratitude. Like it is gratitude. And it took me a while to, there's being grateful in a more intellectual way of thank you for this, thank you for that. And then there's the feeling, like the actual feeling of gratitude, that for me starts in my heart and just spreads throughout my entire body and beyond. I mean, there's times where I'm meditating and I'll meditate just on the words thank you, or I'll only meditate on the feeling of gratitude. And I feel that energy push its way out into the world and I feel unstoppable. I
Mm,
feel invincible. And this past year was the first time because I had spent a lot of time finding gratitude to heal for the past. So, similarly to you, I lost my dad when I was young. I was 23, and his death was very sudden. He was diagnosed on June 1st with colon cancer, and he was gone August 17th. So it's two
mm,
and a half months, very quick. It was a lot. My parents were divorced, but it's still a lot on everyone, on the whole family. But I didn't deal with that for a very long time. So, in my own healing in the past few years, I spent a lot of time finding gratitude for his death and also gratitude for his life. And that was such a powerful thing. This past year was the first time I was able to use the tool that is gratitude. And yes, it's a tool, but like I said, even before we started recording, it's just become my way of life now, my
mm.
perspective on the world. But this year I've been hit with a few things and it was so cool. And above that, it was so empowering to be able to use gratitude in the moment. So, like last June, I got hit with two skin infections at the same time on my face. So, I had a fungal infection somehow and a bacterial infection on my face that took over. And I mean took over. I would meditate because all I wanted to do was take a cheese grater to my face. I had to email my agents and full stop auditions of any sort or anything that was like a public appearance or any because I couldn't put makeup on it and I couldn't go out. I could have, but that it was enough to sit in front of the mirror and be like, under my eyes, all around my chin, my cheeks, everything was like these pustules. And I remember my ego got hit so hard because suddenly, A, I'm an actor. My face is kind of what sells me. And B, it's like, it's part of your identity. No matter how much work you've done on yourself, I mean, your image is part of who you are and what you present to the world. And so I remember sitting there in the mornings, and some days I would be crying and I would just write everything I'm grateful for. I'm grateful for the fears that this skin infection is triggering in me, in that I still put so much weight on my physical beauty. I put so much value in it. I'm so grateful for this opportunity to use all the discomfort that I've been pushing myself through physically. So, like cold plunges, meditation, all these ways of pushing my physical comfort zone. I was like, I'm so grateful I get to use that now because I'm not going to take a cheese grater to my face and I'm
Yes.
not going to touch it and I'm not going to do anything. And so I would just, every morning, I would sit there and I would write and I would write and I would write and write all the gratitude for this skin infection and
Yeah.
everything it was teaching me about myself. And that, once I actually started doing the daily gratitude, I don't think it's a coincidence that it started to heal faster.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and that's the thing, and I love when I get to have conversations with people after I've been on stage somewhere, and the question I'll get a lot after I've spoken about gratitude is, "Well, okay, you're sure, fine, easy to be grateful when you've had a good day, like, what if you can't see it?" Is sort of the most common question. And I would say, "Well, give me an example." And to tell me about, what's the bad thing? What's the crap that, hit the fan today or yesterday or whatever it was, and why I got in a fight with my partner, or, had a disagreement with my parents, or, a friend who was being, mean or toxic, or, whatever it may be. So what did you learn from that? And that's the part that people don't think about is, well, what did that teach me some boundaries? Did that teach me a lesson that I shouldn't maybe push that far, or that I could arrive in that situation with a different energy, or whatever it may be? I mean, just even the simplest thing of, I've got a journal on my bedside table. And what I try to do is, I don't even have to write the words at the top of the page anymore. I'm grateful for, because it's assumed, but literally one, two, three, four, five, just five things. You're finishing the sentence, today I'm grateful for. And sometimes I will put the why underneath. Like, this person, even though we had a not great interaction, that taught me something today. Or maybe the weather wasn't great. And find, if you can find the gratitude in the negative things, that changes absolutely everything. It's easy to, yeah, it was a beautiful day. It was good weather. I found a $10 bill on the ground and I got a promotion and I got this and all the, yeah, sure, easy. That's great. That's easy to be grateful. But that's the doing the work part that people don't think about, and what you're talking about. And just, yeah, when something bad happens, finding that silver lining, which is the other thing that I'm big on. But gratitude can also be that silver lining. Like, it is again, it's the beginning, it's the end, and it's the fuel. It changes everything.
Yeah, and, I love to when you say beginning and end because it just, for me, brings up I try to not try, I begin and I end every single day in gratitude. So I begin my day with journaling gratitude similar. Usually I write 10 things I'm grateful for, or sometimes it's like 5 pages if I've got the time. And sometimes it's I start writing out the anxiety if it's there or the fear that's there. And then I always come back to gratitude. So for me, writing is a big avenue with that.
Sure.
Um, it just like helps get it out. And then I always end the day when I'm laying in bed, I filter through all the good things that have happened in the day and I pick my favorite and I say thank you. And what that does for me, and that, by the way, is an exercise right from the magic. What that does is it makes your brain think of all the good things that happened.
Oh,
And then you
absolutely.
and so it is though, like it's so refreshing. Not refreshing because I've had so many incredible conversations, but I've never had one with somebody who seems to understand gratitude from an embodied way like I do. So every cell in me right now is buzzing because sometimes I don't have the words necessarily to explain to people what gratitude does to your life. And having that mindset of gratitude, having that mindset of positivity truly completely changes your life.
Oh, it does.
And
And it comes back to something you've spoken about in the podcast that really does speak to mindset of whether you are approaching things from a place of fear or a place of love. It's like, whether you're coming from a place of abundance or a place of scarcity. And that can, with people reframing gratitude, because gratitude for most people, if we're going to put real big air quotes around most people, tend to frame gratitude within abundance, within just the good, the normal, societal good, whatever that may be, that people traditionally think of as good. But when you can find gratitude within the bad, and it takes away the fear, it takes away the scarcity, because when the bad things happen, of course fear kicks in, and of course that feeling of scarcity kicks in. But if then you can disarm that and take away its power by finding the gratitude, finding the abundance, finding, as you've spoken about, finding the love within the thing, then that changes absolutely everything. And suddenly these negative things, because we all have negative things that happen in our lives every single day, but they have less effect on you. It builds up. I don't even want to say an armor, because it's not like you're putting something on. You change who you are. And these things just don't bother you the way that they will sometimes instantly bother other people and create. It's something else I talk about a lot, is the difference between responding and reacting as one of the most important choices you make hundreds of times through the course of a day. Am I going to respond to something, or am I going to react? React, in my mind, by my definition, is knee jerk. It's instinctive. It can be a little, Neanderthal-esque, in that there can sometimes be aggression or anger attached to it. Respond is, I'm going to take a beat here. I'm going to breathe. I'm going to think. Then I'm going to respond, instead of just rah. And we are in a very reactive society, unfortunately. And so when you become someone who can respond instead of react, that's your differential. That's the thing that sets you apart. And that makes you not completely immune, because no one is, but less affected by those negative and fear based sources that all of us get thrown at us. And And I know you would say this too, but does this solve absolutely everything? No. Does it solve things like mental health crisis? Absolutely not. And people need outside help, but it is one of the many tools you can put in your toolbox to help you get through the day, to help you succeed and excel in your life.
I love that. That's such a golden nugget. So, for people who are realizing that they're more reactive and that they're not responding, what would you say? So, I think the pause is really important and to build that. And for everyone listening, I just want to preface this with even these tools that we talk about, you might understand them and go to implement them and it might be inconsistent for a while. You might be like, cool, I'm going to pause the next time I get triggered by something, but you don't. And you react anyway instead of responding. And that's okay. The fact that you can have awareness after the fact, that's the win to me. And then you slowly start building that muscle memory because work on yourself is to me the same thing as like working out your body at the gym. It's one muscle at a time and you have to practice the same thing over and over and over again before it comes second nature. Besides the pause, is there any other immediate tool that you can think of or that you recommend for people to start building responding instead of reacting?
Well, I think that some of it is, and you alluded to this with, like working out the body and what working out the mind is, it becomes a practice. It becomes one of the things I like to talk about a lot is this progression. I don't even talk about the progression necessarily, but I talk a lot about choices. For me, in my mind, and this is something I don't address from the stage or anything like that, but we are faced the statistic I like to throw out is we're faced with 2,000 choices every day. That's the average, which feels huge until you realize so many of them are done exactly the same way. They've become habits. We don't think of them. So in my mind, if you are presented with a choice, just a simple binary one thing or another choice, you can go one way or another. If you continue to make that choice in exactly the same way without any thought behind it, that becomes a habit. It becomes automatic because you're not thinking about it. If you continue to make the same choice repeatedly with intention, you mean to do that thing, you are putting intentional effort behind it, that becomes a routine. Routines and habits are vastly different things. You don't go to the gym, as you said, you don't go to the gym for your workout habit. You go to the gym for your workout routine because the things you do have intention and they have meaning. So if we add intention and meaning to more things that we do in our lives, which are simply taking that beat, thinking about things, and like literally taking the moment to be present and to think, you change habits into routines. And then, if you're very, very lucky, and you continue to do things repeatedly, those routines with intention, they can come to a place, and you've alluded to several of these things that you do, and I know I have several of them that I do. You come to a place where those routines become sacred. That's when they switch from being routine to a ceremony. Because much
Ooh.
like with I remember back in university in a Japanese history class, watching a film on the Japanese tea ceremony. I reflect on that a lot because every movement of the spoon, of the brush, with the stirring, the placement of the cup, every single piece of it has meaning. That's why it's a ceremony. It's not a habit. It's not even a routine. So we need to change up the routines and the ceremonies that we do. That allows you to respond and not react. And what a lot of that comes down to is the conversations we have with ourselves. The vast majority of our dialogue through the course of our day is inside our own head. And again, you're talking about working out the body, we have to work out the mind because we have this function called confirmation bias, where when you truly believe something in your heart, your mind, your subconscious mind is going to look for proof of that thing low key in the background all day long. It's like you have a lawyer on retainer in your head, just constantly trying to prove your case all the live long day. The way I like to think about it in, 2024 in this world that we're living in, it's like Amazon, it's like social media, it's like streaming services, it's like Google. There's an algorithm. All of those things have an algorithm with one purpose, which is give you more of what you want. They are all set up that way. We all have an algorithm in our head. Things start to change when you change what you feed your algorithm, because all your brain wants to do, all your confirmation bias wants to do is feed you more of what you want. If you're feeding it negativity and crap and reactions and that everything's bad, well then of course you're going to react because your defenses are up, you've got armor on, you are putting up your dukes and you're ready to fight. If you think and you start to find those lessons, you know those lessons exist if you take those moments and you take those beats and you find your routines and you find your sacred ceremonies, that changes the way your mind works. It changes your internal algorithm and you start to look for different things and they start to present themselves. But it is, as you said, it's a practice, it's a routine, it's a ceremony. You've got to train yourself to respond and not react. For me, there's several. I mean, you talk a lot about the ceremonies and the rituals that you have on the podcast, and I love it. And you've alluded to several of them this morning. But I beginning and ending my day are huge ones. But one, I speak my daily intention out loud, not whispered, not in my head, out loud every morning while I'm doing another one of the routines, which is making my bed. Those two things start my day off very well. And it is literally my intention. And this is something I learned from a fellow speaker friend of mine, James Rouse from Colorado. He's been doing this his whole adult life. I've been doing this for about 8 or 9 years now, where every morning I say the same words, and there are little alterations and edits that come over time, but the same words every morning to myself. It didn't change my life the first time I said it. It didn't even change it months later. But years into this practice, it changes the way my brain works. It changes the way I look at things. It allows me the privilege of being able to respond and not react because I've trained it that way. Just like if you train by, lifting weight, you're going to be able to lift a certain amount of weight because you have trained yourself to do so.
Now, for those, because for so many years, I heard the word intention and I thought I understood it. And then I would start similarly, writing intentions for things, saying what my intention is. And then for a long time, I was like, I don't understand how to set an intention. As silly as that might seem to people, but I was like, what words am I supposed to be using without telling us what your daily intention
Well,
is,
I
unless you
don't
want to
mind
share it?
sharing.
But could you just give an example to people of like, sometimes it just helps for people to have some kind of formula to be like, okay, cool. Cause it's scary to try to come up with something yourself the first time. So
Right.
could you share kind of what an intention sounds like?
Well, I'll answer that in two parts. First, what for me an intention is, it is what I want and how I'm going to do that. Because it really has to come down to work for you. And I will say that as a bit of a pre-statement because I don't mind sharing my morning intention. I feel we're in a safe space here, Sarah, and I don't mind at all. But the first two words in my intention, I say "Dear Universe," though it's just part of my routine to say that now. But I also realize in saying that I am not asking the universe for help. I am not asking the universe to conspire with me to make things good. Everything that I say is work I must do. But it
Wonderful.
just is sort of part of it now, and it has a nice musicality to it to start the whole thing off. But so I don't mind. Every morning I get up and obviously nature calls and I go to the bathroom and I wash my hands and splash some cold water on my face and drink a whole bunch of water. And I go straight back into my room and I open my curtains and pull open the blinds. And as I'm making my bed, I say my morning intention, which goes, "Dear universe, today I will go forward with positive intent and joyful purpose. I will strive to make meaningful connections with everyone that I meet. I will not allow my emotions to control me, but nor will I ignore them, for they are a part of who I am. I will respond and not react. I will be patient, I will be kind, and I will listen to be a better father, a better friend, and a better partner. I will carry a heart that is full of gratitude and be ever grateful for all that this life has provided. I will speak more kindly to myself, as though I was speaking to a dear friend, because I am. I will remember my hard work and stay true to the version of myself that I would most like to be for today is going to be a great day.
Oh my gosh. That is so beautiful. Thank you so much.
It's
That like
my plan. And look, did that change my life the first time I said it again? No. Did it weeks later? But now this again, 8, 9 years into this, yeah, I'm telling my brain today is going to be a great day. I'm telling my brain all of those words I just said. So the algorithm kicks in and I'm looking for it all day long.
I love that. I at the end of my gratitude in the mornings, I do something similar. I did for many years, and then it's very interesting with these routines that turn into ceremonies. When you stop doing them,
Oof.
you also notice. And I didn't do it for a while, and I just started up uh, maybe a month ago or so. And at the end of my gratitude, I also say, so I say in a way that is of like giving thanks. So I will say, similarly, thank you, universe, for filling my life with an abundance of health and wealth and gratitude and love. Thank you for guiding me to think, to speak, to do only love today and every day. Thank you for letting me walk in kindness, compassion, forgiveness, and love to whoever and whatever comes my way today. And thank you for letting me be the biggest beacon of love that I can be while being authentic to who I am today.
Mm,
So similar, it just that's why I love hearing also other people's ways to inspire people to that there's never a set way. Like that's, my perfectionist, I talk about this a lot, but like my perfectionist still exists. I love her so much. And she's so
sure.
wonderful because I love when she tries to find herself in the spiritual work too, of you're not saying the intention a right way so that it's effective or not effective. But so for everybody out there who's thinking or inspired to start their day with an intention, I think what both of us are saying is A, find something that works for you. When I say thank you, universe, you can sub that for any word that resonates. Thank you, universe. Thank you, God. Thank you, creator. Thank you, source. Thank you, sky. Thank you, sun. Thank you, moon. When I direct my gratitude to something, and for me, it is this connection with all that is, as I call it, just this energy. You can say thank you, energy. When I direct my gratitude towards something, I feel it more. I feel it because I feel connected. And I personally believe that we are all connected and we are all one. And it's when we try to live in separation from one another and in separation from everything, that especially is the breeding ground for fear of any sort.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. And the other thing or person or thing that people can thank as well is themselves. And we don't often do that. I talk a lot about cooking and use food as a metaphor in some of the stuff I share from the stage because that for me, that's meditation for me. I know you've talked on the podcast about meditation. I sometimes struggle with traditional air quotes meditation. Going for a walk is meditative for me, but cooking is especially. I just everything goes away. My mind is clear. I'm being creative. I'm being of service to others, to myself, and there's something magical about that. And one of the phrases I like to come back to is that when you were a kid and you didn't have money to buy your parents anything on Mother's Day, Father's Day, or a birthday or Christmas, you would make something at school and it probably wasn't, the most fantastic piece of art or craft. And you would come home and say, I made this for you. And, I've got kids in their 20s and I miss them coming home and saying, I made this for you. And I love to cook and I love having other people around my table. It is wonderful. Sarah, you're always welcome. But I
Thank you.
love to I love to cook, but I live alone, and so more often than not, it's for me. And so what I try to challenge people to do is find the things in their lives that allow them to look themselves in the mirror and say, I made this for you because we don't. We don't often do those things. And all the stuff that you talk about and the work that you've done in your journey that you're sharing, and thank you for doing it on the podcast, is the kind of thing that you can look yourself in the mirror and say, I made this for you. And I love that you were encouraging others to do that. That again is part of my purpose, and part of my purpose statement is that I want people to be able to find that and find those kinds of things, so because the conversations we have in the mirror and the conversations we have in our head can be among the most toxic that we have in our lives. And
Oh,
I
yeah.
for sure am guilty of that. I get vain. I say some of the worst things a person could say to me. And I've really got to work on dialing that back. And, sitting and looking at myself in the mirror until I see softer eyes. Like that's something that takes a lot of work.
Yes, yes, all of this. So I had, I haven't talked about this too much, but I had a really bad relationship with my body for so many years. And I'm talking like what I ended up discovering was like severe body dysmorphia and disordered eating. I would go hours and hours, hours without eating, and it like became this weird game. And it started because like I got this terrible bout of acne after my dad died, and then to try to heal it, I was doing like juicing cleanses and this, and I was trying to figure it out, not realizing that a lot of it is stress and hormones and cortisol, but I started realizing that when I felt out of control, a way that I felt in control was if I would manipulate my body. Because it was like a physical thing. So like I could starve myself if I needed to. I could do whatever I wanted to do. And then you start looping in these conversations in your head, exactly what you're saying. It's, your thoughts, that self-talk can be such a vicious tormentor. And it's so hard to break away from it. And to be honest with you, it wasn't until about a year and a half ago, in the thick of my work, I was doing yoga one morning and I kissed my shin. And out of nowhere, I was like, thank you for this vessel of love. And it just hit me. I was like, right. My physical body, yes, it's my temple, but not only that, it is the extension of my love in this physical universe. And I had like my summer, I was just coming out of my summer of sadness. So like I was super drunk or super stoned or eating like shit, all this stuff. And that's when it really like hit me to be like, hey, like, what are you consuming? How much are you consuming? I really started to take a focus on what I'm putting in my body. And it was really beautiful because I started finding, I would say gratitude, not necessarily grace, but gratitude for whatever meal I would eat. And it just, and I actually spent months where I would just sit during dinner. Similarly to how you're saying maybe when you cook, like my actual meal became the meditation, and I would honor every flavor and every texture and all of this stuff. And I had to rebuild this entire relationship to food. And it's interesting because that self-talk, once I started being able to look in the mirror without makeup on, naked, and not cry, because for so long I either avoided the mirror. And look, as an actor, real talks right now, sure, I know I'm beautiful. I know I can be excessively beautiful. Anybody can when you have a team of makeup artists and hair people and photographers capturing the right angle. You know what I mean? I'm aware of that. But when I took all of that away and I would just stand in the mirror with nothing on, that talk was heartbreaking. Instead of focusing on my big blue eyes, I'd be like, oh, they're so puffy all the time. They're so puffy and they're this and they're that. And once I started changing that self-talk, and look, I have to say, it took me months.
Oh,
It took me months of actually standing in the mirror and starting by saying, I love you. The first time I did that, I started sobbing so hard and I didn't believe it. I was like, but I don't. I'll say the words, but it's not there. And I just kept saying the words for weeks, for months. And then finally it was like, oh. And then when I got my skin infection last year, it was really cool. um, because all of that negative self-talk immediately came back. It immediately came back. My desire for control is like, okay, well, it's skin, so obviously it's body, so like stop eating. Like, it's so cool. I think it's so cool. Just like the human psyche, how we work of, you're never going to quote unquote fix these things. It's not of, and I've talked about this before actually with another guest, but I think sometimes the personal development and the self-help world make it sound like you have to like rid yourself of your fear and rid yourself
yeah.
of this negativity. It's never gonna go away. All you can do is learn to accept it and not let it take the reins.
Yeah. It's being able to say, I see you there. I see what you're doing, but not today. That's
Yeah.
not happening, and I think you brought up so the thing with self-talk and being an actor and understanding the value of story, and again, I was an English major, and I'm obsessed with movies and TV shows, and I love stories, and the thing that people don't realize is the assumption that the voice in your head, the voice of yourself is A, telling the truth, or B, is any type of trustworthy narrator, because 'cause they're not. They are the least trustworthy narrator we have. Look, I do this for a living. I talk to people about positivity and about gratitude and about choices and their attitude and all of these kinds of things, and I say horrible things to myself sometimes, again, and so it's not an accurate narrator. That's why we need to take that step back and change that algorithm on what we're feeding. Because again, you mentioned, things like cortisol and other stress hormones and our body will hold that stuff and get addicted to that stuff because it may spike the adrenaline. And so getting that cortisol suddenly feels good instead of the way it should, where it feels bad and how much it's hurting you. And there's just so much about it, but it's it's not about not trusting yourself, but don't trust your own narration
Yes,
because
oh my gosh, yes. Thank you so much for bringing that up. Sorry to jump on this, but you're
no,
inspiring
please.
some things. Um, because here's the thing, that's exactly it. And I wanna touch base, let's circle back. I'm gonna put a pin in a thought, which is the narration versus intuition. There's a difference there, so we will circle back, I don't wanna forget,
Noted
but
for the record.
thank you. Um, but I think what I didn't understand, and I think what a lot of people don't understand, is that that narration is A, programmed, B, changeable. And I speak about this a lot with my friends because they're like, "But how? How do you change it?" And I'm like, "Literally, it would be even to this day, it's like if I look at myself in the mirror and I start catching myself being like, the jiggle here or like this here, I'm like, stop and just say something else. Say instead of being like, "Oh, the jiggle here," being like, "Oh, hey, look how I've been working out lately and look at the muscle that's building." Or, "Oh, I look so tired today." It's like, "Look at my big, beautiful blue eyes that are my dad's. It's the biggest thing of my dad's that I have, and what a beautiful thing that I have." And sure, maybe they're puffy because I spent yesterday crying, but at least yesterday I honored my emotion. So I literally will stop, and that's the work, right?
Yeah.
And that's the thing. It is a lot of work, and sometimes there is that difference between intellectual understanding of the work and then practical execution of the work, which is pausing in those moments and rewiring the narration. Because, like you said, eventually the rewire becomes the habit, becomes the routine, becomes the ceremony, becomes your way of life. And so, thank you for saying that, by the way, when you said you speak about positivity and then you're still dealing with negative thoughts and things that come up because that's also life, and I think for me, sometimes imposter syndrome can pop up because I'm like, "How can I just, like, help everybody else? I can help heal everybody else in my life. I can give the best advice." But then sometimes with my own self, it feels like it takes extra work, or some days I'm just tired. I'm just
Yeah.
tired, and I'm like, "I'm just gonna be today."
Well, and that's the thing, and I have no problem in saying because of the nature of my job and whether I'm in front of a school or a conference or a company, talking with people about all this stuff, there becomes this performative assumption that I've got it all figured out somehow. I'm just sharing the work that I do, my own story, my successes, my failures, but I don't have a problem saying on mic or to anybody who will listen, yeah, I have dark days. I get low. I get sad. It I can fall into a valley and I get help. Like I am a it seems it's weird that it's contradictory, but it seems contradictory to some people that I'm a professional motivational speaker and yeah, I go see a therapist for sure because we all have stuff
Yeah.
and we all have the place that we need to put it. But the key thing you said a minute ago, which I wanted to focus in on, is the work. Just that phrase of the work because let's be honest, it's 2024. We live in a society with Botox, with freaking calf implants and butt implants and implants for anything that you could possibly need to get a quick fix. There are a lot of pills to change things. All the stuff in the news about a diabetes medication that is now helping people lose weight, and it's a quick fix. That's what people are looking for. That's why when you're having those conversations with your friends and they're like, yeah, but I don't get it, because everybody says, yeah, but how do I get it now?
Yeah.
A whole season of a show will drop all at once on a streaming service, and we don't have to wait for anything. They don't know both the joy and the pain of, I have to wait how long for that? Or I've got to wait a week until I know what happens at this cliffhanger that, we had back in the day. That's why I'm grateful some streaming services are putting things out once a week again, because
Yeah.
we need to learn that patience, and that it takes that patience and that work, because everything is instant gratification, but it's the work that is the most important. I'm not even talking about, now that you've said that, it's this realization I just had in the moment that what I'm talking about on the stage isn't solutions, it's what the work is. And the work
Yeah.
is going to look different for everybody, because the way I do things is not the way other people will do things. All I want when I'm giving a 60-minute or a 90-minute presentation to a group, whatever that group may be, I know not every person in that audience is going to be picking up everything I'm laying down. But if there is one nugget, whether it's a quote or a phrase that I said, or just something that they're able to pull out that they go, huh, and maybe they reflect on it. I guarantee you in a month, they will barely remember that there was a presentation and probably couldn't tell you my name or pick me out of a lineup. But if they remember that thing I told them, that's job done. And
Yeah.
that's what the work is, remembering what that little thing is so that you can do the work. But so many people are unwilling to do the work because of everything that gets driven once again into this false narrator we have of, no, you can do it quickly.
Yeah. No, it's, patience. Oh, patience.
Yeah.
It's actually one of the things I say in the mornings too, is like, thank you for letting me be patient today with whatever comes my way. Because yeah, we live in a world of instant gratification. And I've always been a little, I definitely get sucked into it and I still do, let's be real. Um, but I've always been a little removed from it. I've always been a little removed of social media because it's never felt very comfortable for me. I'm also quote unquote old school in that I love books. Like I love to read. I'd rather read all night than watch a movie, which sometimes gets me in trouble because for my job I need to like watch all the latest things, but I could sit down with a book on a beach in the sun for 12 hours a day for the rest of my life and I would be so happy. I love to read and I love to disconnect, but patience and especially patience with yourself. Like
Yes.
that, woo, that is like because with that instant gratification, I think we're also as a society like breeding even more perfectionism because you're right, there's a quick fix to everything. So if you can't provide a quick fix for something that's quote unquote wrong with you, how do you fit in? How do you belong? And I think, ooh, now this all coming to me in the moment too, but like I think we're creating a society where it's like, if you can't provide instant gratification to somebody else too, then the belonging is questioned. It's like, how much patience do you have with yourself and how much patience do you have with everybody else in their own progress?
Well,
Yeah.
it comes at one of the things that I'm always fascinated by, and I think it's indicative of the work that I do, and I'm sure the work that you do because of personal interactions that you have. I mean, I stand up in front of an audience, and energy becomes very important. The energy that an audience has, and you become a student of it. And so I've become fascinated with, the energy of somebody walking into a room and they don't have to say a word and you know what kind of mood they're in. And people are, I think it was an Oprah quote I remember from years ago that she said, you have to take responsibility for the energy that you bring into a room. And most people don't.
Yeah.
They will inflict their energy on other people instead of sharing their energy, because like, I'm in a bad mood, so you're going to be too. And I am going to, this negativity, this cortisol, this whatever is going on with them, that very much invisibly gets sent out to everybody else and affects everyone around you. It can be a virus, and it's the choice of whether it becomes healing or hurting.
Energy vampires are a real thing.
Oof. Oh, please. Yeah.
I mean, the past few years, I've become so aware of my own energy and other people's energy, and I've always been a bit of an introvert, but especially the last few years. Okay, before I forget, I wanna come back to intuition
Yes.
versus the narrator, because if I'm being honest, I'm so aware of my mental thoughts and my patterns that sometimes even I have to sit and be like, "Is this intuition or is this fear?" Or so for you, what is the difference for you between intuition and the narrative?
I think again, it comes down to that ability to, it's the respond react, it's the pause. I mean, intuition, that word can kind of be on a sliding scale of positive and negative things depending on perspective and how you look at things. But I think that intuition and instinct should be very different things in the way
Mm,
that we describe them, but a lot of people see them as very much the same. An instinct, again, I think is more primal and reactive. An intuition should be based on things that I've learned. Here is what I believe the response should be. This becomes my natural intuition because of gathered knowledge instead of instinctual reaction. And so yeah, I mean, that's why I have to question the narrator. I mean,
yeah, oh,
sometimes with myself.
you explained that so beautifully, thank you, and thank you for, using that word switch of, like, instinct versus intuition. I think that is a really wonderful way of looking at it because for me, I used to be very instinctual, reactive. Then, you know, did the work, da 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 da, ongoing. I got really confused in 2023. I really confused reactivity with expression,
Yes.
right? Because, and maybe we can touch on this too of toxic positivity is also a thing. And I think a lot of people with gratitude, I know I did, I swung way into toxic positivity and I was like, I will never feel sad and I will never speak negatively and I will never feel these things again. But really, I was just denying my truth.
Well, but what it all comes down to, and something again that you've done a whole episode on when you talked about meditation, is the more you're able to sit and be with your own thoughts, which was another great point that you brought up a minute ago, because you talked about life throwing all of these things at us, which it absolutely does and absolutely will continue to. The problem is people tend to want to quell that or silence that by distracting themselves with a whole bunch of other things. And so you can't use, life throwing all types of things at you with other distractions. That doesn't make it go away. You have to be able to accept the things that are coming at you, sitting in silence, being with yourself. Again, that's why I love to cook, and I like going for long bike rides in the summertime, and there's places I like to go for a hike, or I get real meditative when I'm on a drive. Just listening to music, but the music almost shifts into the background and just drive, and you're with your thoughts, and that's a place where you can reflect and work that intuition again like a muscle. What am I building up in my intuition so that my intuition, instead of my instinct, is to take a beat, and it all just does come from practice. I mean, again, even just in my day-to-day work, when I'm standing on a stage with a mic in my hand, and I have said this so many times, I wish there was a way we could, hook up all the electrodes and somehow hear the 12 different conversations going on in my head when I'm in the middle of
Yeah.
doing a show, because I'm thinking about what I'm saying next and how I'm going to change it. I'm also judging and catching and gauging the reactions of people in the audience. And I'm also thinking about what I'm going to have for dinner later and all these different things. But sometimes, like just as an example, if I'm up on stage and say I'm speaking at a high school, which I do high school presentations a lot, and distractions for them can be a big thing. Certainly, I don't want to paint everybody with the same brush, but it happens. If I'm on the stage and somebody in the front is maybe talking to the person beside them, or they're on their phone, I can see them. instinct would tell me on mic to go, dude, what are you doing? Come on. And, maybe there's some anger attached to it. Intuition tells me from experience and from having done this for as long as I have, here's the trick. I'm going to walk over and stand very close to where that person is and keep talking, but not move from that spot so that they know I can see them and they are aware of the fact that they are in fact busted and they should probably put their phone away or stop talking to the person that they're talking to. Intuition comes in a little softer than instinct does. Instinct, again, I take instinct as reaction and intuition as response, which
Yeah, that's
we're working this out in real time here, Sarah, and I
yeah,
love
I
that.
know, me too, me too. And actually so I'm gonna riff off that for a moment, and it's like, yeah, it's like intuition is more of the loving choice,
Yes.
you know?
Instinct
Whereas
comes from fear, intuition
fear,
comes from love. Yeah,
yeah, that's a really great way to look at it. And I think you choosing to walk there and stand there, that's actually choosing love instead of embarrassing them. And even if you're quote unquote right, you know, I've learned this is my highest truth is always love. It doesn't matter if I'm quote unquote right or wrong in a quote unquote fight. I'm learning that when I'm hurt, when I'm triggered, I dissolve. My highest truth is still always love. And if I can act in love in that moment, if I cannot say the mean thing, if I cannot roll my eyes, if instead I can just look the person in the eyes and be like, are you okay? And what do you need? And even if it's me being like, "I'm sorry that this and this happened," even if I was right and whatnot, you can diffuse so much with love, and it goes all the way back to what we were talking about at the beginning of I have trained my eyes and my mind and my heart and my soul, and I continue to when I look outside this window in front of me, when I look at you in your eyes, I see love. And I see all the beautiful things and all the little miracles that I get to experience every single day. That's also part of my morning intention is I say thank you for all the miracles I will experience today and every day. And sometimes people question me. I have some cynical people in my life who are like, "Oh, but
sure.
Sarah, what's a miracle?" And I'm like, "A miracle is the fact that I turn on the tap and get fresh water." To me, a miracle is when the sun hits my face. A miracle is the fact that I have a car that I love that I get to drive, like all these little things are miracles to me. And people are like, no, a miracle has to be like something profound, like something that Jesus could perform and heal somebody with his hands. And I'm like, for sure, that is absolutely a miracle. But if you can train yourself to find all these little miracles in your life, you bring the bigger miracles to you because, like you said, what you're looking for, whatever that programming is inside, your subconscious is going to look for more of that.
Absolutely, and I mean, that's why I love that, in several of your episodes when you've talked about fear and love, I really think that one of the things that will change not only individuals, it'll change communities, it'll change societies, it'll change this world that we live in if we start normalizing love more. We are
Yeah.
so normalized with conflict and boundaries and vitriol and anger and othering people and everything else. That's what so many of the problems that we all face and those things that become those distractions, those things that the world throws at us, those negative things, if we start to normalize that love end of things. I mean, my favorite thing is with several of my closest male and female friends, but because it and in a more stereotypical way, but with several of my closest male friends, we normalize at the end of a conversation, love you, talk to you later. Like saying I love you to your friends, all of
Yeah.
them, no matter the gender, but just saying I love you. And look, I certainly have friends that I can see and understand their societal or, from their upbringing, the way they're kind of locked in some different ways. And so we're able to say I love you in different ways, but normalizing expressing that love and sharing that love with people because that is disarming to the fear and can again create a routine, if not a ceremony, where love is the baseline, and that starts to change the algorithm too.
Yeah. Oh, so beautiful. So beautiful. I think that's a really beautiful place to wrap it up. But before we do, I have two questions for you.
Please.
So I'm ending every episode this season, considering the name of the show is called Gratitude and Growth. Would you be willing to share something you are grateful for right now and something you are growing through right now?
Interesting. Okay. Something I am grateful for right now is the time I have had in the last few weeks. Just in my business, the nature of the business, especially in one segment of the work that I do, which is working with schools, January is a slow month. It'll start to kick back in this next week when the new semester starts. I can start getting on planes and traveling around and speaking at schools and conferences again. January is slower. I'm grateful for the time that it has given me to sit with myself, to reestablish my routines and ceremonies post holidays, to reset myself mentally, to be able to reflect on the material and the things that I do and the way I want to be of service to the communities that I go out to, whether they be companies or schools or what have you, and allows me to refocus. So I've been grateful for time. I feel a sense of abundance with time recently. So I'm definitely grateful for that. What I'm growing, where my growth is coming from right now is one, I've kind of tried to double down on some not double down, that's a overused statement, but I'm working a little harder on my routines and ceremonies around my physical health, both with the way I'm eating, what I'm putting in my body, and with the way I'm exercising. Again, the holidays can be tough, and January is a time when people kick in. I try to be consistent all the time. I'm very fortunate to have a best friend who I've known since second grade, who I love very deeply, that I get to work out with at least a couple of times a week. And I never liked working out, but I've found a lot of peace and joy in the particular workouts that we do. And so I'm grateful, or I'm grateful for it, but that's the growth I'm working on is, I'm not getting any younger. I want to keep my body being able to do the things that I want it to do. And that's something I'm growing towards and continuing to work on.
Thank you so much for sharing all of that.
My pleasure.
Ian, thank you for coming on today.
Thank you for having me, Sarah. Truly a pleasure. Just a joy-filled and inspiring conversation for me. And
Likewise.
I thank you for the time.
Thank you. And thank you so much, everyone, for listening. I hope, especially some of the tools, I loved how we talked about so many tools, like actually actionable tools that people can use to implement. And as always, stay grateful and keep growing. Thank you so much for tuning in today. If you liked what you heard, hit that subscribe button and maybe send it to someone who you think might need to hear today's message. And let me know how everything's sitting. Leave me a rating and a review and let me know what's resonating with you. What do you want to hear more of? What's your favorite episode and why? And I hope you find your way back here to another episode, another time, as we keep exploring this beautiful and wild thing that we all call life.